Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, and good afternoon to every one of you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my perspectives, my thoughts. I'm going to talk about the experience of building Infosys, the experience of being an entrepreneur from a different country, a different context, a different environment, a different situation, and so giving you a different perspective on entrepreneurship, an environment which is quite challenging. And then, towards the end, of course, I will talk about, what are some of the lessons, what are some of the attributes of an entrepreneur, which I strongly believe is universal, which I strongly believe is applicable to any country, any situation, any environment. Because ultimately, entrepreneurs will face challenges and will have to overcome significant odds in order to succeed, and that will require certain attributes, and that's how I'll conclude my talk today. It's also, of course, relevant in today's environment, because definitely the situation, the economic situation is challenging. Probably an understatement when I say challenging. But I also believe that these are the environments in which, if you really apply yourself, if you have a great idea, this is a wonderful opportunity to actually think about entrepreneurship. Infosys was started almost 28 years back by 7 of us. I'm standing somewhere in the middle. Of course, a lot more hair, and on the left, you can see Narayan Murthy, who's the chief mentor, chairman, and some of the other founders are also in the team. There are other people also in this picture. We started with about $250, 10,000 rupees actually, with a very small investment. And today, depending on which day you look at the market, somewhere around the market cap is somewhere around $15-16 billion. So we've come a long way. One thing has not changed from when we started the company to today, which is the vision of the company. We said that we want to build a globally respected corporation, and that has not changed even today. The concept of a globally respected corporation, and every action, every strategy, every initiative we take is derived from that word, actually, respect. It allows you to actually create an environment of high performance. It allows you to create an environment of delivering high value to your customers, to your investors, create a world-class environment for your employees to work in, because you are aspiring to be respected by every single stakeholder, everybody, including society. So your behavior, your response to challenges will have to be calibrated against this, the dream or the vision of being a respected corporation. And we feel, that this is something which is aspirational. It's still an aspirational thing, because every day you have to strive to still be respected. Every day you still have to be respected. So this is something which, from day one, we said we'll be a globally respected software company, and it still remains our vision. You can see the growth of the company in 3 stages. As I said, we have been in existence for about 27 years now. And when the company was started, the economic situation in India was very, very different. It was a closed economy. India was not, part of the global economy. The economy had not been opened up. Lot of restrictions were there on import of equipment. Lack of current account convertibility, which means that you cannot, for example, travel abroad with unlimited budget and things like that. The government of India would restrict the amount of money you can spend outside for things like sales, promotions, operations, and things like that. Even basic infrastructure, etc., was significantly worse than what it is today. So, for example, even as late as 1993, it would take actually 2 years to get a telephone connection. So how would you set up a global business out of a country like India where it takes 2 years to get a telephone connection, right? So those were challenging times, and our focus in those years, the strategy we had adopted in those years was to survive as a company, because the first task when you start a company is to make sure that the company is able to survive, is able to establish itself, is able to create a product or a service which is relevant in the marketplace and things like that. And in our case, our focus was to leverage our capabilities to provide application development, R&D kind of services to companies around the world. Mostly for product companies to start with, because for product companies you don't need to deliver the software in real time. You can develop the software, and once it's tested, etc., you can ship a tape across, and that's how we used to do this work from India. The online connectivity was not yet established at that point. The technology was not there, and the cost was prohibitive to do that in the 80s. The second 10 years would be the period after 1991. Luckily for Infosys, the government opened up the economy, and this is true for a successful entrepreneur. Take advantage of the situation, and we took advantage of the situation because the economic reforms removed a lot of the constraints, a lot of the restrictions placed on companies, actually. Removal of licenses, full current account convertibility. There was a controller of markets, etc., who used to determine the IPO price, the price at which IPOs could be done, etc. So we were one of the first companies to do an IPO after the liberalization, and where we priced the IPO at much higher value than what would be termed as a par value and things like that. It was priced much higher. And then government created incentives for promoting exports. For favorable tax structures were created, but also competition was allowed into India, and we were one of the few companies. Our industry was one of the few industries which actually welcomed competition, because we strongly believe that if you are going to compete in the global markets, in your domestic market also, you should be able to compete with competition. If you are going to ask other markets to be opened up, you can't say your own market will not be opened up. So we said we must truly compete, and in this period we also focused on building a world-class company. The first 10 years were survival. Now we were actually building the foundation for creating a world-class company. And we did several things in those 10 years. We created an organization that could scale up. So, for example, in the first 10 years, our revenue grew to about $1.5 million. From, the first year our revenue was 130K. So the first 10 years it went from 130K to 1.5 million. And from then, that is from, let's say, 1991 to date, that's the last financial year, we had revenue of $4.18 billion. So the company actually grew exponentially in the last 18 years. In 1999, our revenue was about $120 million. Our first billion took 23 years. The next billion took another 23 months. So, exponential growth actually. We also listed on NASDAQ. We did an IPO in India in 1993, but in 1999 we listed on NASDAQ. Again, because we felt that if you're going to be a global company, we must get compared with the best companies in the world. We must position Infosys as a leader in the most competitive market, or most competitive financial setup, or financial market actually. And so we said that we will get listed. It allowed our customers, our prospects actually to get a view of Infosys, which would not have happened, if we were not listed on NASDAQ. So even though the money we got from that was not very large. What we raised through that IPO on NASDAQ was not very large. But the objectives were beyond raising capital. It was actually to create an awareness, to create a perception of the company, a brand awareness of the company, become a benchmark in our industry and things like that. And it has done very well. It's part of the NASDAQ 100 today. One of the best known technology stocks actually, which is tracked by many companies today, many analysts, etc. We've grown to more than 100,000 employees. So started with 7, today more than 100,000 employees. And over the years, we have had various innovations in terms of HR practices. We have had a successful employee stock option plan where every employee was given stock options. And we have won every possible award there is to win, voted best employer, best managed company, best in corporate governance, best in investor focus, and things like that. And we continue to do that. Again, the reason why the company participates in these is to continuously demonstrate both inside and outside that, we every day we earn the respect of the stakeholders. Internally, it actually drives employees because you give them clear goals and targets and visible objectives to be met. And so participating in these awards, etc., is part of actually building the brand and building internal goals for our teams and our employees. The lessons, for India, and this is for India really in some sense, and lessons in a broader sense is to is that we have become a poster child for the reform process in India. It is possible to run a business legally and ethically in a country like India. Companies coming out of emerging markets can compete with the best multinational company and still succeed. We can benchmark against the best global practices, or even create the next best global practices, and we are able to follow the best corporate governance practices and still succeed. In several new initiatives taken by NASDAQ, etc., Infosys is one of the first companies to follow. So we were one of the first companies to fully comply with Sarbanes-Oxley, even though we are a foreign corporation and we don't need to comply. We said we will comply. When NASDAQ introduced electronic reporting of results and things like that, we were one of the first to comply. We were actually the 10 companies chosen by NASDAQ to introduce electronic reporting of results and things like that. So several best practices were introduced by Infosys actually, and this has given confidence to Indian industry. It has given a new perspective about India and emerging markets actually. In the 90s, we also looked at how we can create a company that can scale up, a company which can take advantage of opportunities which come our way. So we looked at several of the standard processes which are there in any corporation in terms of HR, in terms of systems, processes, which are the backbone of how you run the business, our infrastructure, and creating an institutionalized mechanism for strategy, planning, etc., and then establish a framework for growth. How we will create multiple engines for growth, and how we will create a company which can grow along multiple dimensions and things like that. So, for example, when it comes to talent, the way we have created scale, or an example of how we have created scale, in the last 12 months, the company has received 885,000 applications for job. So, imagine how you would process 885,000 applications. We made, we probably interviewed about 130,000 people. We made 46,000 offers. We recruited about 33,000 people joined. Now that's the scale at which our HR engine works actually. World-class processes and systems. Again, if you want to build a consistent delivery engine, a consistent experience for our customers, we must have a process-driven culture. And how do you create a process-driven culture? You can't expect people to behave identically in similar situations and things like that. So you have to make sure that your systems support or reinforce that kind of behavior across the company. So the processes are implemented through systems, and the behavior is tightly coupled to these processes and systems, etc. How we execute projects, how each milestone is completed and how it's reported and all that stuff. If you want to build an organization which can provide consistent, predictable, sustained experience to our customers, you need world-class processes and systems. We are at the highest level of the capability maturity model, put out by Software Engineering Institute. We assess ourselves against the Malcolm Baldrige framework, even though we are not eligible for the award. If we were a US corporation, actually, we would be eligible for the award, because we consistently have exceeded the scores for getting an award. We've built a set of global development centers. These are world-class facilities, and the rationale for building world-class facilities, of course, the employees like it. They have a very high performance work environment. But our customers, when they see that, because you can't see software, how do you see software and evaluate a company? But when they walk into our facilities, they say, wow, this company is world-class, because the facility is second to none, actually. And as I said, we have created a very structured, systematic way of how we develop strategy, how we do planning, how we do budgeting and things like that. Typically, a 5-year scenario planning is created, a 3-year business model is created, of course, 1-year budget is created, and then the budgets are revised on a quarterly basis. So there's a systematic way in which we we develop strategy planning and then tie it to budgeting and reviews and operations, etc. And finally, multiple engines of growth. The company has constantly added new service lines, constantly expanded markets, constantly added customers, constantly looked at changing itself. 10 years back, we were basically a technology solutions company. Today, we are a business solutions company and able to manage multi-million-dollar, multi-year relationships and things like that. So what are some of the lessons from our own experience actually? What are some of the things we have learned from building Infosys and where we are today? First and foremost is the courage and the conviction you have in your own capabilities, in the capabilities of the people around you, because in spite of the environment, in spite of being a third world country, we have competed with the best in the world and things like that. But that conviction, that courage has to come from within, has to come from the leadership of the company and things like that. The second is the vision, and I talked quite a bit about the vision, and I strongly believe that the key word in that vision is the respect, actually, creating a respected corporation, and every action then is derived from that, actually. A strong value system again comes from respect, actually. We strongly believe that when in doubt, we need to disclose. The softest pillow is a clear conscience, because ultimately, we need to go home, sleep peacefully. Actually, that's very, very important. And so, strong value system is important. And strong value system is important even from a society perspective. And actually, in a downturn, that is when your value system gets tested. And it was very interesting for me. I landed here on 4th evening, actually, and I saw the results, and I saw President-elect Barack Obama speak, actually, and he was talking about responsibility and responsible behavior and responsible corporations and things like that. So that's, again, the emphasis on value system and things to that. Building trust, again, I think in today's environment, the trust building is actually absolutely necessary. And trust building can happen only if the leaders walk the talk. Leadership by example is the best way in which you can build trust, and corporations becoming good corporate citizens, actually. And lastly, we strongly believe in decisions made based on data, based on thorough analysis of the data, and figuring out what is the right decision. It does not matter who brings the idea to the table, who brings the data and things like that. So data-driven decisions. So we say, okay, in God we trust, everybody else brings data to the table. What are the attributes to the success? And of course, there are only 5 context invariant, and this is true anywhere, actually. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to have an open mindset. You must look for ideas. You must look for best practices. You must create a learning organization. Being open is actually creating an ability to learn, ability to absorb new ideas and new thoughts and things like that. Constantly look out for improvement and things like that. Meritocracy is very, very important. In fact, this was very, very unique in the Indian context. A company which is created by professionals, which is going to be run by professionals, not family owned, not run by family. None of our family members are actually part of the leadership or part of the company, actually. And very unique in the Indian context, because most of the large companies in India are family owned. So it is very, very unique. But I think in the US, etc., probably it's not very unique. But you have to create a culture for meritocracy. So that results in high performance environment. That results in people wanting to excel, because if they do well, they know that they can rise up within the organization. Constantly you have to look for speed of decision making, speed of execution, imagination, innovation, and lastly, ideas are not enough. Actually, you have to focus on excellence in execution. Ultimately, you have to make sure that the ideas result in the goals being met, or the results being delivered. That's true for customers. That's true for internal initiatives and things like that. So the attributes for success in any endeavor, any organization, in any venture you have, as individuals also, are actually openness, meritocracy, speed, imagination, and excellence in execution. That's really what Infosys is all about. So my closing thoughts are about entrepreneurship, are about leveraging a power of an idea. In our case, the idea was to distribute work, to do work remotely, to provide world-class services to our clients around the world, to compete in the global marketplace. Now, as I said, to be a successful entrepreneur, of course, you need a good idea, you need a market that's ready, a team that brings together a set of people who have mutually exclusive skills, a leadership which have mutually exclusive skills, good value system, and money. And I strongly believe that money will come if you have all the other things. So thank you very much, and we can have question and answer.